post this. It's 7 o'clock, and I will call the Board of Finance regular meeting to order. Well, let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. So tonight we have 4 of our 6 board members present. We've got Mark Mulvaney, Dan DeBorsets, Ricky Ramos, and myself. Glenn and Brianna are not available tonight, so as vice chair, I'll be conducting the meeting. We also have Steve Dunn with us and John Lucas, Marsha Marion, John Burrill, Ken Post, and Rosa Fernandez. Is there any public comment to start with? Hearing none.
Dan, you don't see anybody on the phone or anything that wants to talk?
Nope, just a few people that Eileen mentioned.
Okay.
We haven't received any communication or correspondence this month, so there's nothing to report there. I'd like to make a motion for us to approve the July 8th regular meeting minutes and the August 3rd special meeting minutes. Any comments, discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Eileen, you need a second on that.
I think, yeah, Mark did.
Oh, he did. I'm sorry. I didn't hear that.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye, but I didn't second it. I was muted. I think you did.
Seconded.
I heard you through. Oh, Dan did. Sorry. Thanks. Okay. No opposed. So it passes 4-0. Okay. So we can get started with the report of the first selectman.
So I'm going to keep it really short tonight because we have a lot of subjects to go over. We got through the storm okay. I think the general consensus is that Eversource dropped the ball on this. My feeling is that they waited to bring in crews until they realized the storm was really going to be bad. And that was Tuesday night. And it took them to Thursday night, Friday to get crews in here. And then they weren't prepared to assign those crews, because I know in New Fairfield, exit 2, Bob's, exit 1 on 84, there was at least 60 to 80 crews sitting for hours with no assignment. So Pura is launched an investigation on that. The legislature is also doing it. I support both of those. I think what Eversource did was wrong, and we can't allow it to happen again. But virtually everyone in town is back with power. We still have a few people, individual homes that are having trouble, and we're trying to help them get that done. We have gone through, and interestingly enough, our road crews, Ralph's team did a great job. Basically by Wednesday night, we had cleared every road that we possibly could clear without the electric company, meaning places where there were no power lines. And so we're going around town now. We're clearing out some other trees that look to us dangerous. We continue to do that. And that's an ongoing thing, but we're really looking at it right now. As everybody knows, our purchasing agent resigned last Friday. We're actively looking for a new purchasing agent, and we'll move forward with that. I think we already talked about the bonding that we did for the new school and got the 1.55% interest rate. And I'm going to leave it at that unless anybody has any questions for me.
And then we can look at the revenue and expenditures for the financial director report.
All right. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
And again, I apologize for not getting this out to you in advance. That we have done 3 different FEMA grant reportings in the last 10 days, as well as everything else that we're working on. But I will get this out to you in the budget actual as well. It's all incorporated in here. That And I am not moving my, all right. With respect to the revenues, this is a preliminary copy of the revenues the taxes are a little bit under budget, 215,000 under budget. We had thought they were coming in under budget, and they did. Primarily prior year taxes, I'm sorry, prior year taxes were good. Primarily the current year taxes were low. And this is on a modified accrual basis. So when we look at the graphs, it's a little bit different from that. Licenses and permits, that we're still some final balancing to do. We knew that we were behind on the building permits, partially because of timing differences, some that came in advance, and differences with the estimates. We talked about that back in January or February. The grants, the grant revenue is higher than what we had expected. We did accrue receivable from FEMA for the microburst. We have that all approved, but we're not allowed to get paid for that until the final Category Z data is in, and that we put in yesterday. So once that's approved, they'll pay this, and then they'll decide how much Category Z money we're getting. But only this, the donated services has been accrued because it's all signed off, and we know the amount. The other one is not accrued because they could still make adjustments to the amount, and we'll wait until closer to the audit to see if we've got enough data to put that in. The one that's not included here is approximately 90,000. That we've got charges for services, that the conveyance taxes did not come in as high as projected. The other things, the investment income did come in much higher than projected. Thanks to the middle of the year, you'll see how it just dropped. The bottom fell out after COVID hit. All in all, that we have $60,000 more revenue than what we thought. So we are 0.1% different than our budget. We had just hoped that we were going to have more with back taxes and with investment income. With the expenditures, the town expenditures are 1.3 million less than budget. We had already talked about taking some of, let me go there, 1.3 million less than budget. The school expenditures are 507,000 less than budget. That you'll get that report shortly. That we do have some potential accruals. I put 100,000 in for that, for example. The EMS money, we have not reimbursed them. Hopefully we get paid that from FEMA, but we would still owe them the money for that third shift. We have of the surplus of 1.8 million, we already accounted for 600,000 to be to go to next year's budget. We knew about that at the time we did the our original budget, and also the non-lapsing fund that we would take out of here and put into next year's as a balancing factor. So we have $1 million more. It's hard to remember what happened when, but we did all the budget before the schools were closed for the rest of the year. So that created an additional, of this 1,400,000 or so comes from the schools being closed for the rest of the year. 200,000 comes from not funding OPEB. 125,000 comes from the police being under budget, that they didn't have the retirements, they didn't have the overtime once COVID hit. The COVID expenses were less than the budget. We had thought we were going to be putting in dividers and things, and that didn't happen last year, and it might happen to a lower cost this year. Then grounds, which I want to double check and see if we're missing a bill because it's unusual for property and grounds to be under budget. But those are the big factors that make up our $1 million that we more than what we had anticipated back in April and May. With respect to grant funding, the updates are in red. That FEMA, that we filed the grant application, that we put everything on it because that's how we understand we have to do it for the Connecticut grant later, even though we don't think that we will get everything. And everything totals about $170,000. That and that's the COVID FEMA. Greg Dembowski did a real nice job yesterday and put in for the storm from last week, that FEMA estimate for $270,000. That includes our time and costs and overhead. The elementary school, there's a grant out there for $74,000 or so that we were going to use to cover the Chromebooks. Ken applied for the grant. As soon as he applied for the grant, the state froze the process. Because they're still trying to figure things out at the state level. So we're still waiting on that. The Department of Health has kind of got their act together for their $14,000 and we have received nearly all that $14,000 now. We file monthly and they reimburse us monthly. And most of that is covering Doc's extra hours. The Small Cities Block Grant, I attended a webinar on that today, and I don't have a lot of hope that we're going to get money. We're just too rich of a community, but we are still working on it. If the ambulance stuff, the EMS stuff isn't covered by FEMA, we would look to this. But we don't know. We know it's not a definite no yet. The state has a new municipal coronavirus relief fund. Oh no, this is the old one that we are applying for. That we must hear back from FEMA before we apply. It was originally due at the end of this month, and they've extended it to the end of September. It's only about half of the money that the state has. I called last week to ask what's going to happen to the other half of the money. And according to them, they're not even going to talk about the other half of the money until they get all of the applications in and sorted through and figure out what's what. And it's a little disappointing since everything else is moving so fast that they have the luxury to just sit on the money and wait. But since we last talked, there's a new state coronavirus fund, $160 million that the governor has announced. That as of last week, that they had it's supposed to be coming out this week. They had no timeline. They had no procedures. I asked to see if it's going to be, all going to the cities, and CCM that's taking the lead on it, Connecticut Conference of Municipalities. He said that they are strongly encouraging them to do an equitable distribution. So there's no promises there. And just because some of you have asked me about some of these other grants, at the bottom, that there's this Governor's Emergency Education Relief Fund, and they did that for lower income communities. The Governor's Everybody Learns Initiative, lower income communities, and then the DALO Foundation, lower income communities. So they're out there. We know that they're there, but they're not for us. We haven't done anything on capital, that other than working on balancing it, but no no updates on Mark had asked us for some policies and things. The economic recovery dashboard, I'm still haven't gotten over to the Board of Ed to work on payroll and turnover savings, a graph for that, although it's still, you know, there isn't any payroll yet. The special ed costs, we need to work on a graph from that. And EMS, I'm working with them on that. But the other ones, we do have some graphs, which in the future I'll send you out in advance. That this is just the tax collections, and you can see that our tax collections are on target for July. That we had a normal tax collection period, so that's good news. That our back taxes, we had those were a little higher than they've been, and of course that makes sense. Because if you're, that we know a lot of people fell behind last year, and you have to pay those before you pay your current year taxes. So the red is last year, or is July for this year. And the interest is not as high as it has been. That intuitively you would think that it would follow the back taxes, but because everything's a cash basis and you can pay partially back taxes, the interest, but no principal. It just never falls that way. When we look at building permits, that we're still balancing the building permits for July, so they're not here, but you can see March, April, May, and June just kind of sucked a little bit. The conveyance taxes, that this was a one-off this year, but they're just kind of normal that at the end of last year. Interest, oh, look at, I think that you can see 19 and 20 are blue and green. And 20, you can see it's just dropping, that we are down to 0.15%, although we have a handle on how we might get up to 0.24%. That, so that's, and this is our interest for July, just it's the bottom just fell right out there. The substitutes, we've just started to pull this data in because we don't have any substitutes till September. But the board, the education department, not the full board, was nice enough to help with data so that the greens are 2009, and we have the long-term and the short-term subs. The blues are 2020 with the long-term and the short-term subs. We don't really know, we haven't ever tracked it before between long-term and short-term, but we want to try to see what it's going to look like. And when they start posting the subs, they're going to divide it between long-term and short-term in the general ledger, because when we hear about the budget and the budget process, that there's it's distinguished between long-term and short-term. So that schedule is set up, but there's nothing in it for the current year yet because no subs yet. This one is hopefully big enough for Dan to read without getting too close there. This one is just some of the expenditures that I worry about, that all in one account in human resources. We have professional fees, we have the actuary, we have the labor attorney, we have the pension that went through the roof. I didn't want to ruin my graph, so I just wrote the real number here. Then we have other. This was to get out of that VOIA. So we're just starting to track that. And within that category of professional fees, we've got a budget for each one. So far in July, we only paid the labor attorney, and we're at 8% of the labor attorney budget in that account. So this is just one that we want to keep watching because it could easily get out of control. Police overtime, again, we want to watch that. The police didn't take their vacation time last year, and we made some adjustments to sick time in the contract. So we want to watch that to see, because again, it's one of our most variable expenses. And so in July, we did have overtime that I think there was Black Lives Matters and a graduation, maybe that was the month before. But we just want to watch that. And all of these, I didn't want to bore you with both, but we've got the month over month and we've got the year to date graph. With respect to health data and other data, we've got coronavirus cases, new cases that are in Brookfield, to watch that. We've got unemployment statistics that both the percent unemployed and the number unemployed, which of course vary in the same manner. And then we've just got some of these other ones that are that we thought would be good to look at. The number of government bonds to see if there's any big swings there. The stock market, which is doing surprisingly well, and the interest rate spread. And up here is just why we're looking at each one of those. But it'll take time to look at each. So all in all, we have our economic dashboard, and there's some goods, some bads. We just there's nothing for guidance there in total. Any questions on any of that?
So, go ahead, Mark. So I'm just trying to, go ahead, to figure out takeaway from that presentation, which, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So the takeaways that I jotted down for 2020, there looks like there's a net surplus, right?
Yes.
And that's a fairly sizable net surplus.
Absolutely.
And that's obviously going into the general fund. That's the way that works.
Well, without any action, it's going to go into the general fund. And if we follow our methodology that we had talked about at budget time, what should happen is next month when we do the transfers, I should be asking you to transfer all these the extra budget money to transfer to capital non-recurring. If we move it over to capital non-recurring, we could manipulate it a little bit legally, a little bit better.
That's right. Okay. And then, so that's 20. And then the early 21 indications are, the most important thing, the July tax revenue is on plan, which is excellent. But I think every year, if I remember the graphs, it doesn't start to deviate till later in the year, but that's still good. The other revenue expense and the economic recovery data, from what I was listening to was, all over the map and too early to tell. That's my takeaway from that. Would you agree?
I agree.
Okay. That's all I have.
My only comment would be that a blanket statement that we throw it, maybe I interpreted it wrong, but that we throw it all into the capital non-recurring. I'd like to see at least some of it go into the general fund and be safe. I mean, we still have to build that up. So just want to keep that in mind next month.
I would agree with Mark.
We do have a draft of a fund balance policy that I can't remember if it went to the selectmen or not yet, but it's going to go to both boards. And we do talk a little bit about if we were to take, not this year, but is an unusual year, but in a normal year, If we were to take the excess and put half in fund balance that we don't touch and half in fund balance that we might be able to touch if we needed it. So probably what we should do is get that distributed before we do the discussion next month.
Are there any further questions for Marcia on that presentation? Okay. Audit update, is there anything for that?
So the extent of my work this month was sending Marcia an email with a question, and she responded. So you want to give the update there, Marcia?
The auditors were in that I'm supposed to be working on the financial statements right now, that they will be here September 14th for 2 weeks. We have a few things that we'd like to do that involve outside people, so we need a little time. We've got to manage the time. One is the pension. We need the actuarial report. We've balanced in finance as much as we can, that we've sent that to the reporting from Mass Mutual. The accounting is unusual, that we've sent it to them because it doesn't reconcile with our records, and they're getting back to us. It's been about 3 weeks now, and I sent a reminder earlier this week. I would like to do an inventory of the equipment. Just we have nothing that's we have it in the budget for the current year to do an inventory of the equipment, and that's just waiting for me to call them and set that up. And I was going to try to do procedures and stuff, but procedures are going to have to wait. We'll get the numbers in and backfill the procedures for us to keep it up to date, to add internal controls to it. We may have a change to the financial statements in that someone has bequested us money, potentially adding money to it, to the statements, but it's a split interest residual equity trust, I believe is what it is. So we've got some accounting to do on that. That's it for now.
So we're a bit delayed from the original optimistic schedule of being done with the pre-work in August, but that's with COVID and school reopening and storm. That's not surprising, but we're still on track. The ultimate goal of getting it done in the calendar year is still the goal, and we still are playing a bit of whack-a-mole, covering one issue and other ones start to pop up. And so Marcia's, and teams on both sides, town and school, are doing all the stuff that you need to do to address issues that pop up. So
yes,
it'll be more active as the fall comes around. It'll be more active, and we'll keep on top of it.
Then I'd like to invite Rosa, and do you want Ken also for the Board of Ed financial report? Do we need a motion for that? Mark, you're good at remembering what we need a motion for. Do we need, no, we're not at the table, I guess. I don't. Okay.
I don't think so. Yeah.
Go ahead.
So hopefully you guys have all been forwarded the financial report for June. We're looking a little better than we since the last time we spoke, and Ken is here to answer any questions that you have about any of that. So we'll just turn it over to Ken, and if there's anything you want to focus on, just let us know.
Ken, could you maybe give an overview of why the numbers came in better than we expected, what the higher level items were that were variable for that?
Sure. We are, just to remind you, this is not final yet. It won't be finalized till probably end of next week. We did, since the last report, we had a few positive and negative swings. The variance now includes the $30,000 that we transferred from the school food service account and $52,809 that we transferred from the student activity fund. On the other side, it also includes the pull-ahead items that we took out of the 2021 budget, which included furniture, instructional supplies, and some technology. Employee benefits were more positive due to a refund of our May dental expenses and our lower unemployment than expected. Transportation variance was also better because the refund we got from All-Star was larger than they originally told us it was going to be. And on the other side, the supplies and other expenses variance is lower due to those pull-ahead items that I mentioned earlier. And as of right now, since I put this preliminary report together, I'm not aware of any significant negative variances since then. So I expect that we'll come in a little more positive as we finish, paying our final bills for the year and closing out open purchase orders.
Ken, can you share your screen? Because I don't have this stuff printed out.
Oh, I don't have it up on my screen.
I can do it if or Dan, whoever. I actually don't have screen sharing abilities. I just checked, but
I got it.
I can pull it up.
You should be good now, Rosa.
thanks.
Oh.
Well, Marcia's got it, I think. So
Oh, no, I think
there she
Dan,
goes.
Yeah, that's mine.
Perfect.
So where do you want to start? Let's see. So this is, you want to walk through it very quickly again, Ken, now that the screen's up for Mark? Just really quickly. So
Yeah. I want to know why we got more of a refund than we thought. What happened there?
I can tell you exactly what happened. They originally gave me the refund based on the expectation that their drivers would be back to work at a certain date, and they didn't come back until a couple of weeks later than that. So they had less expense that they incurred.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Do we get any feeling whether they're going to work with us on the prepayment discount for next year?
Well, that's a really good question, Mark. I'm based on what happened last year, and I had to go back to them several times to get to them to work on giving us a refund. I'm hesitant to pay it up front, given the uncertainty this year. And I know we budgeted for the discount, but I was, if we're going to end up having to negotiate with them, I'd like to have some more leverage than I did. I don't know how you folks feel about that. I'm already starting a discussion with them since we're going into hybrid. They're only going to be, busing 4 days a week.
Right.
And the complexity of it is that their contract, the contract we have with them, it has a daily rate for each bus. And it says specifically in the contract that this contract is based on a 182-day school year. So in effect, they've got their all year's worth of expenses spread out over 182 days. So it's not as simple as if they run like we're running 177 days now, so they're going to run 5 days less. I don't think we can just cut off 5 days of payment, but that's something we have to work out with them.
Well, it should be a lot less than 5 days, with some Wednesdays being knocked out, certainly in the beginning.
Absolutely, yeah. And we don't know for how long.
When is that contract over? When do we renegotiate?
We have to go out to bid again this coming year, or I'm sorry, next year.
I'm assuming we're going to look into some terminology better than that for us.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I don't know if that is a standard term or not, but that's certainly something we'll absolutely have to look at.
Thank you.
But I understand from their point of view too. They want to make sure that if they're building a year's worth of costs, all of their overhead and everything into 182 days, but we have to have some flexibility.
More than one bus company out there.
Yes, there are.
Do they also have, is the athletic transportation, is that a separate contract with them? I mean, not knowing now what's happening with the sports, I mean, it's kind of in limbo at the moment. I know discussions about moving things to the spring, but I imagine that's a significant amount as well.
In the contract has the daily rate for the basic runs, and it also has hourly rates for other activities like field trips and athletics. And there are times when, if we have a lot of teams going or trips going on the same day at the same time, sometimes you have to reach out to different bus companies to secure transportation. None of this is as simple as we all wish it would be.
Are there any other items in the June financials to point out with the spreadsheet on the screen?
I mean, I highlighted the ones that were, that I thought spoke to us.
All right.
Yeah, thankfully we didn't have any big surprises, negative surprises like you do some years.
So we received, I'm trying to figure out where in the agenda to discuss, but we had received the preliminary list of some of the school reopening expenses and savings. So I don't know if we want, I know in the new business section, we have the COVID cost budget transfers, which I think is more on the town side, but maybe we should keep that all in one category and we can just have some overview of that. The document that we received today, we can discuss it there. And now we'll just do the report of the committees.
The document you received today is not final, and it's not something that's been reviewed with the Board of Ed in detail yet.
Okay.
So I'm a little uncomfortable
Okay.
going over that at this point in time.
Okay. Is it possible then for, I think some of us have reviewed it and probably have questions, but maybe we send that as a collective board to be prepared for next week?
That would probably be very helpful.
Is the rest of the board in agreement with that approach? Maybe you have a few questions to at least put out there now. I don't know.
I have plenty of questions on it, but the first and foremost, I guess, would be let's get it on the same spreadsheet we had before so we can interpret the same thing we've been working with for a few months now. And then there's lots and lots of questions, but I'll email them if that's what you would like.
Yeah, I mean, if this is preliminary, and I know that there have been discussions that have happened since we saw this initially today. So I mean, maybe for the known items, those of us who called into the Board of Ed meeting know about the Chromebook delays and whatnot. Maybe just kind of an update on that and some of the purchases that have been previously approved. I know that the laptops were already received last week. And I know Eric and his team are working on getting those ready.
Yes, and the Chromebooks are in limbo right now. We're having difficulty as predicted finding enough lunch monitors and isolation room monitors, but we're still working on that. Okay. We had the bid opening for the cleaning services today. So we have to go through, and I think Marcia is going to have Kevin go through all of the bids to make sure that they meet all the technical requirements of the bid. And then we will take the lowest bidders and do some reference checks before we make an award. Hopefully we'll do that early next week.
So that's like a 1 week, 2 week process, or how?
The bid openings, I think if we can get through, making sure all the technical aspects of the bid were done properly, that we can be able to check references by early to mid next week and make the award sometime next week, which will give us time to get people in here and get them trained.
So you have some flexibility on that, because I'm not sure that cleaning of the schools is one thing that lowest bidder is going to necessarily be the best thing for us.
Right. And yeah, I was going to say, Marcia could probably give us a little better idea of what.
Yeah, is there a committee that reviews it,
lowest responsible bidder? And there are, you have to be questionable about, somebody coming too low. Absolutely.
So we have done our preliminary work. I just want to review it to see that everyone is qualified as far as technically that they gave us the information that we requested. That we were a little concerned about the lowest bidder, that it didn't seem to be appropriate. that it was so low that, and it seems unsustainable. That the other one that our intern, who's very good from Brookfield, brought up was some of these firms are from New York. What if we go into another lockdown and they can't come over here? So that's just kind of an interesting caveat to add to it. And it was great that the intern brought it up. David Albanese lives on Route.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And I've been involved in lots of public bids and have seen myriads of reasons people can disqualify bidders. So glad you're looking into that.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Mark, because I had that fear too of being boxed into a corner, taking a low bidder that might not end up working out. So
yes, too, then for the cleaning, I mean, I know that one of the issues is the electrostatic sprayers being backordered because I think everybody wants them, but do these cleaning companies already have that type of equipment so that helps negate that inability to acquire it, or?
That's a good question. I don't know if that, I don't believe that was asked in the RFP. But that's certainly a question we can ask folks when we interview them.
Okay, then so for let's have our comments ready and questions. I can compile something as Brianna's out of town right now. For those of you who have their questions ready and want to shoot me an email tonight or tomorrow, and I'll send it off to Rosa to disseminate.
I would echo Mark's request that we had previous spreadsheets that were running, there was the 729 one that was updated for 8.3, and they kind of tracked really easy to follow. If we could get it in the same format with just the assumptions that, or the actuals based upon those assumptions, it'd be really much easier to follow than what we got today. So
yeah, no, we certainly can do that. And we want to be able to answer your questions. I think the idea was just to get information to you guys as soon as we have it. And as we said, the Board of Ed still has to review a lot of this stuff as well. So this is information that they have not really gone through in detail. But once we have that, we'll flow it through the correct channels and in the format that you want. So
thank you.
Yeah, and just by way of explanation a little bit, the purpose of the sheet that you saw today was, and that was at the direction of our finance committee, was to kind of come up with one sheet to put all these costs on. And in my mind, I was viewing the other sheet as just what we went to the Board of Finance for, and it was all the various scenarios. And I thought that adding anything onto this would make things more cluttered.
Yeah,
I'll do whatever everybody thinks is the best. I'll do it. It's all the same information.
Yeah. So actually, the more I think about it, now I'm looking at the 8.3 version, and that was not complete because we had already done the IT purchases. So that wasn't part of that request.
Right.
Getting everything in one document is probably the best way to do it.
Yeah, that's what the purpose of this one was.
Starting from scratch and using that new document with everything to date and going forward is the way to go.
That especially is important as we do this iteratively. Like, where were we? How much do we spend now? How much is left in the budget? Where do we see problem children? And move forward.
Yep.
Good.
Great. Then, Dan, you may have covered it already, but the audit committee is the only one we have on our agenda for tonight.
Good.
Okay. Then we move on to old business, and we have the Town Center Streetscape Phase 5. So I'll hand it back to Steve.
Yeah, Greg Gambowski is going to make a presentation on that.
Okay.
Greg, are you still there? We say yes. Greg, hello.
Steve, yes, I'm here. Sorry.
That's all right.
My presentation tonight is about the STEAP grant, not about streetscape.
Oh, okay.
At the last meeting, the Board of Finance approved streetscape Phase 5, and at your Westcog meeting today, I believe that was approved.
Yes, you're right. You're right. Okay, so why don't we, so you don't have to stay on forever. If Eileen, if you're okay with it, under new business, we're not going to do the Candlewood Road water line, right? Because you wanted to have the entire board there. So are you going to make a motion to table both of these? Eileen, you're still,
Yep, sorry. I'd make a motion to postpone the Candlewood Lake Road water line until our next meeting. Anybody want a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion, comments? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion passes 4-0. Then we'll move on to new business. And for the sake of letting Greg step out, I'll make a motion to move the STEAP grant application to the first item of business.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Greg, the floor is yours.
Good, thank you. Good, thank you very much. I assume you can all hear me okay.
Yep.
I think Dan Secor has put up my very brief presentation, which I emailed to you. I hope you all received it a couple days ago. So I'll just quickly talk about just a couple slides. Back on July 9th, OPM announced a STEAP grant solicitation. It came to our surprise because there hasn't been one in a couple years, and this really came out of nowhere. And it's really good news for us because we've been very successful in our STEAP grant applications. Over the past 4 or 5 years, I know of at least 3 or 4 STEAP grants that we were awarded. So this was good news for us. On July 13th, OPM announced the description of the program and the guidelines. On August 3rd, I made a presentation for 2 possible applications we would fill out for this grant and presented it to the Board of Selectmen. I again presented them more information at their special meeting on August 17th, only a couple days ago. And here I am tonight asking for the Board of Finance's review and approval on what the Board of Selectmen has moved to you. The good news is because of the power outage across most of the state, the application deadline was moved to August 28th. They delayed it by 2 weeks. So here we are now looking to get support to move our application forward. I'd like to talk very briefly about what's different about this STEAP grant application and the guidelines. For those that have been involved in seeing STEAP grants the town has received in the past, there are significant changes to this, to the guidelines the state issued. The first thing which is noteworthy is they have stated the highest priority projects they will review and approve will be COVID-related capital projects. Statewide, STEAP approved towns, there's only going to be $15 million available. So it's important to really put a project forward that's high in their priority list. Second, behind COVID-related capital projects are what they call shovel-ready projects, then promoting economic growth. What's also different this time around versus any other time in the past is that the OPM is requiring a town match. They don't say how much, they don't say that there's a minimum, they just want to know how much is the town matching. They also require that the town approve the project for their application to be accepted. And if you don't have town approval by the time the application's due, they want to know when that vote is going to take place. They want to know the date of that vote. They also state now that you must use it or lose it within 3 years. These are all new stipulations in the STEAP grant program. You're also not allowed to rescope the project. In the past with the STEAP grant, if you had a $500,000 grant, let's say, every year you can submit a budget and rescope it a bit. So the money was a little fungible. No more. The last change, and it's significant, is STEAP grants used to be $500,000 grants. They've now stated the maximum allowable is $128,205. So with all that in mind, I presented 2 options to the Board of Selectmen. One was the redesign of the town hall offices in response to the COVID pandemic. And the second was the Still River Greenway Trail Extension Project, option 3, that I think I've talked to you about in the past. to kind of fill the funding gap we had for that option. So with that, at the August 3rd Board of Selectmen meeting, they asked us to do some work to better define and cost out the town hall office redesign project, which we did, and we presented to them on Monday. So this presentation tonight now is what I presented to them 3 or 4 days ago. And what I'll be sharing with you tonight is a 3-phase approach. And this particular STEAP application is for phase 1, which is really just focused on redesigning the land use offices. I'll share with you a preliminary floor plan that Alice Dew has put together. She's the land use manager. And I'll talk about digitizing files and why we want to do it and what it's going to cost and what the options are. Then I'll talk briefly about schedule and budget. So Dan, if you can go to the next page, please. This is simply a screenshot, not a very good one, of the announcement that was made from OPM. If you could shrink that page down, Dan. This is page 1 of the OPM website that announced the application. It talks about the July 9th announcement, the July 13th guidelines that were issued, and there's other pages that follow. So if anybody's interested in learning about the guidelines and a lot about anything about the STEAP grant program, you can go to the OPM website and you'll see this page and others, and you can learn more about the application, the 19-page application, and how the rules we have to follow to basically be successful in our application.
That's why we have you, Greg. I don't have the time or expertise for that. Thank God you're on it.
Yeah. So anyways, it's there for anybody that wants to look at it. And I'll, of course, entertain any questions. We spent a lot of time looking at this stuff. There are links after links after links. It never ends with this stuff. So it's just there for anybody that wants to look at it. Next page, please. And if you could turn that sideways, Dan. So this is the corner, the fractional space on the first floor of Town Hall where land use is. The vault's in the middle. That's a concrete vault with 8-inch thick walls, 8-inch thick concrete walls. On one side is the Alice and zoning and wetlands and myself and a couple others. On the other side currently is building and the fire marshal and sanitarians. What we're suggesting we do is flip the two, close down a couple doors, and basically eliminate a lot of the file cabinets that take up a lot of space in land use. The primary reason for doing this flip, as shown here, is to get Dr. Sullivan's office, which is a private office and is required for HIPAA, closer to his sanitarian staff and better utilize the space between the two sides. We would close a couple of doors, we would limit public access, and we would just better utilize the space that's available. We'd also have that conference room moved to the main hallway area, so it'd be more accessible to the public instead of coming through and passing by and through employees. This is all aimed at reducing, making sure there's 6 foot of clearance between individuals and the public when they come into the land use office. It's a very preliminary design, but it's what we're, in the short time we have, it's what we're presenting to OPM is with our application. Are there any questions on this page? Next page. So what do we mean when we say digitize files? Well, you know, we actually brought an office equipment company into Town Hall about a month ago, and we took him through the offices, and his first comment was, oh my gosh, there's file cabinets everywhere. In fact, if you lay out the floor space in our offices, it's mostly file cabinets, and the desks are packed together. So there's actually a state DAS contract. sorry, let me turn that off. A state DAS contract that actually, on a per page basis, digitizes files. And then the question is, what files and how much does it cost? So we actually counted the number of file cabinets, the number of drawers, and estimated the number of pages in each file cabinet. And if we were to digitize all of the files outside of the vault, the public files, not the individual personal files, it's about 112,000 pages. It would cost about $17,000. If we were to also digitize the 1.3 million pages in the vault, that would cost about $90,000. We're not suggesting that. What we're suggesting with this grant application is to spend the $17,000 as part of the state contract. So we don't have to go out there, we don't have to bid it, we don't have to get quotes, it's a state approved contract, and digitize 113 pages of documents and either destroy them if the retention policy allows, or put them in some permanent storage place to free up office space. So in my recommendation to you tonight, I'm suggesting we spend that $17,000. Next page, please. And this is the last page. So the good news about this grant application, what they said is they will announce the winners of the STEAP grants about a month after the August 28th deadline. So we're going to know by the end of September if we are lucky enough to be awarded a piece of that $15 million, our $128,000. I would suggest then we hire an office design consultant. We finish that quick design work. The reason we have to do that, or the reason I'm suggesting we do it, is the fire marshal and the building inspectors will not allow us to do this work unless we have a plan that has a footprint and all the clearances and widths of the public access ways for means of egress and such, for them to approve any plan change we make. And we have things to consider like copiers and a lot of miscellaneous things where we think we can get a consultant to give us a decent floor plan and reviewed by all department heads for about $5,000. We would then get those plans approved by building and the fire marshal. We would digitize the files. We would either destroy or relocate any hard copy files to free up space. We'd renovate in February and we complete it in March. So that's just a rough timeline. And the grant does request or require you do submit a project schedule. I would suggest this one. What's it going to cost? Well, let's look at these line items. I believe we can get a professional office consultant for $5,000. We know we can get one for $15,000 for the entire building. For just the land use offices, I think we can get one for $5,000. I talked about digitizing files for $17,000. And then I've done some estimations, and and you must know this, these are my estimates and no one else's. Remove partitions, destroy them, throw them away, or give them away. We have to revise HVAC, IT, lighting, and phones. And then we have to revise and rearrange the offices, take out some doorways, actually create some new space and some redesign. And then, thanks to Stanford Office Supply Company, which is also a state DAS approved contractor for this, we gave them that preliminary floor plan, and they've given us a cost estimate for those partitions at $40,000. It would be a standard design, standard height. They would all have 18 inches of clear see-through glass on top, so employees can see through to each other and to the public. And then for the sake of goodwill, I put in a 20% contingency because these are very rough numbers. So I'm estimating $158,000, $128,000 will be covered by the grant, and the town would have to pick up the difference. So that is the end of my presentation.
Okay, if I can jump in here. The main reason we started this, we've talked about redesigning offices for a few years. We have to protect our employees in case there's another pandemic or we don't find a vaccine for this one. We are now using shower curtains in between desks, which our fire marshal has disallowed. So we're buying plexiglass to hang from the ceiling to give people some security and safety while they're sitting at their desks. That is clearly just a temporary solution and will not work long-term. And this seems to fit. I talked to Westcog, Francis Pickering, the executive director, and we were talking about COVID-related, protecting your employees, and in turn, by protecting them, protecting the public is going to be a very high priority when we reopen town hall. So I think this is a very good thing to do. I think we have a very good shot at getting the full grant. We looked at the Still River Greenway, but we thought this was a much higher priority in protecting our employees. And it's something that needed to be done at some time in the future anyway. So I think this is a good plan, and that's why the Board of Selectmen supported it unanimously.
Thank you, Greg, for presenting that. Yeah, it seems like it's a good use, and if it falls into if having it fall into the COVID category helps prioritize it, I think that's great. And I know that we've talked about office space as an issue, and anybody who walks in there, it's pretty evident. So thank you for presenting that.
Does anybody have any questions?
I have a couple. Surprise. You said, Greg, that this was a 3-phase project potentially, and this was phase 1. Without going into what phase 2 and 3 might be in detail, what, in general, what would those be? And is phase 1 is that a half measure, and we would kind of be committing to the other phases if by doing this first phase, or could this be a standalone project if we want?
Well, we're calling it phase 1 in case there's STEAP grants that come forward in the future. Originally, we were going to do all of the downstairs, tax assessor, tax collector, registrar, town clerk, and it was just too expensive. We would be spending $250,000 to $128,000 grant. So we thought we would break it up, and in case the state comes back because of the scoping requirements, if they come back next year and say, okay, here's round 2 of the same STEAP grant, we'll just say, okay, we're going to go into phase 2, hopefully, or
Right.
choose another project.
Okay.
Did that answer the question?
Yeah, that answers a piece of it, but I just want to make sure that, by doing phase 1, it's not like you start painting a wall and then you got to paint the bathroom, then you got to do it. You just have to continue, or else it's not.
Oh, yeah. No, this would be the entire land use office, getting it right up to where we need it for the next 15 years.
So this could be a standalone.
Yes.
Sorry, that's okay.
Well, Dan, can I jump on that for 1 second, Dan? Are we going to get into an issue with some of the other employees, right? We did the land use, and we're not doing the town clerk or the assessor. Is that going to be an issue?
That's a very good question. We've already started to talk to employees, and they know people have been in designing, spacing. We've already done some work in the town clerk's office, moving the registrar out by the windows and things like that. And we talked to the employees, and they understand we're doing it in steps. And everyone agrees that land use has the highest need. They have the least amount of space per employee. And no, I don't think it will cause a problem with our other employees. I don't.
Do we have this in the capital plan at all for, if we're not going to have seats?
No, we had not put it in the capital plan that I'm aware of. If we did, it's in like year 8.
I will tell you, it's my hope. I mean, you looked at those numbers, you see the estimates that I made. I'm hoping those are all on the high side. I mean, if, we do have to commit to town funds for this project. It's in the grant application. They ask for the number, but these are only estimates. I'm hoping we come in well under that $158,000. And if we put a limit on this, I think we can manage to a number. That's my hope.
Right. So worst case, we use the 20% contingency and the town spent 30 grand. Let's hope we don't use the 20% contingency and the town spent $4 grand.
Right.
And if anything else comes in under, you're great.
Right.
And are we approving tonight where that 30 comes from, or are we planning for that, or is this just to approve applying for the grant?
The Board of Selectmen suggested that we do the funding from the COVID contingency.
Makes sense to me.
Do we do it in the full amount of the grant of the project, or just the $30,000 on the town
No,
side?
yeah, you have to, because we're trying to do it because of substantial financial loss if we don't get it in and we can't have a town meeting on this, we would suggest that you use the same. Eileen, can I give you the resolution, the motion that the Board of Selectmen used?
Sure.
So I would recommend that the Board of Finance approve a special appropriation for Town Hall redesign Phase 1 in the amount not to exceed $158,000, comprised of $128,205 in STEAP grant funds and $29,795 in town funding from COVID contingency. Having found that the approval of this special appropriation meets the executive order issued by the governor that the approval of this project without a town meeting is necessary to permit the orderly operation of the town, and that there is a need to act immediately during this pandemic emergency to avoid significant financial loss, and that the board that the Board of Finance makes the same findings as the Board of Selectmen and approve this special appropriation.
Sorry, I'm just pulling up
So
the,
moved.
Exactly.
are we allowed to do that?
Oh, yes, we can do that.
Okay. I will second, or Dan seconded. Okay. Any further discussion?
Yeah, so the only thing I didn't hear in there is that we don't do anything if we don't get the STEAP grant.
Oh, we just wouldn't do the project.
But should we have that in our motion?
No, because we wouldn't have to, we couldn't do the project because we'd only have $29,000.
And we wouldn't spend the 29 on doing something.
No.
That's all I want to make sure.
No, we do the whole thing or nothing, you know, we would come back to you if we said, okay, we got 115 from the STEAP grant. We need a little bit more.
I just want to make sure if the STEAP grant gets denied, we're not spending 29 grand on a little piece of something.
No. Oh, we wouldn't do that.
Everybody else is.
No, because that wouldn't be in keeping with what the original agreement and motion was.
Then let's bring it to a vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
No opposed. Okay, passes 4-0.
Other discussion.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you very much, Steve. I'll draft a letter tomorrow for you to sign for us to include with our STEAP grant application.
Great, thank you very much. I really appreciate it, Greg. Great job.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thanks, Greg.
Okay. Next item on the agenda then is the 2020-2021 iterative budget review.
Eileen, if I don't have the agenda in front of me, but whatever Ralph is here for, can we move?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, is that the generator?
Yeah, the generator.
Okay. Then do we need a motion to move things within a category? Or is it just?
Doesn't hurt. So I'll make a motion. We move to the agenda item generators.
Okay, I'll second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All you, Ralph.
Thank you. Steve, I don't know if you want to give a little bit of background or if you just want me to start. It's up to you how you'd like to do this. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. I'm sorry, I was having trouble unmuting myself. So last Tuesday, 2 weeks ago, Tuesday night, the night of the storm, our police station lost power. It went completely dark. That's unacceptable. We have to have our police station up and running. So we were able to get a generator. We got them back up and running in about 45 minutes. The generator they have is original to the building, built in 1983. It's worked very well for the police department, but it is not as reliable as it needs to be. So we're having this conversation, and we've all been through this over the last few years. You know, when I moved here in 1983, no one had a generator at their house. No one needed one. Now about a third of the town has generators. We need to make sure that, especially our police department, must be up and running 100% of the time, 365 days a year. So our proposal is to add a new generator to the police station. mounted on a pad, and to keep the old generator as a backup. Don't remove it, just keep it there as a backup. So we have some redundancy there. And then, last time during the macro burst, we lost town hall for 6 days, 7 days. This time we lost it. We didn't get it back till Friday morning. And and we lost our voicemail. We lost computer connectivity. A lot of people working out of the office couldn't do that. And it might not have helped because none of the communication systems were up and running. But I couldn't even pick up voicemails. And when Ginny and I got in Friday morning, we probably had over 100 voicemails. And a couple of them were urgent in that people needed help. People needed immediate attention. They need oxygen and things like that. And most of those go directly to police, but occasionally they do call our office. We need our town hall up and running. And given this is the 9th storm of this season, and that the National Weather Center is predicting that this is going to be a much higher than average storm season, and our experience with the macro burst and losing power in the last 3 years, I think 3 times in town hall, I think we need to put a generator in town hall too. We have to be up and running for our residents. And while we're doing that, it was hotter than the blazes during this last outage. And while the high school did have its generator and it worked perfectly, and there's air conditioning in part of the building, if this happened during school and there was this COVID-19, we can't use the high school for the seniors. It's probably too risky. And so I'm also suggesting and asking that we put a generator in for the senior center. We could use it as a cooling center, as an emergency shelter for seniors. And I think it's a good idea. So why don't we let Ralph go through the numbers, and then we can have a discussion. Ralph?
Sure. Yeah. Initially, what I was asked to do is ballpark estimates for independent exterior pad-mounted generators for the police department, the town hall, and the senior center. And this, this was spurred on by the event that occurred about a week and a half ago. And so since that time, I've been calling contractors and researching various options. And based on the data collected, I came up with estimates for all of the facilities, the police department, town hall, and senior center. What you're not seeing on the screen right now is the police department. But I've done a similar estimate with all of the same items for a 100 kilowatt generator. And the reason we're seeking a 100 kilowatt generator is so we could possibly expand the police station, and it would accommodate any expansion that we are looking at in the future. Currently, what's in there now is a 50 kilowatt generator. That generator is about 40 years old, and like Steve said, experienced quite a bit of some serious problems during the last outage, where we had to seek the help of WPCA, as well as get a COLA representative out there in the middle of the night to get the generator up and running. So basically, the police department estimate came in at $85,200. The town hall independent unit came in at $145,800. You can see that on the screen there. The senior center came in at $57,600. And then what I was asked to do is see if we could combine one unit that would service both the senior center and the town hall. So that's what I did. And surprisingly, there wasn't that much savings if you could look at the numbers, because you would save a little bit possibly on the generator, but you still have to serve the same kilowatts. So instead of buying a 175 kilowatt generator, you would have to buy a 225 kilowatt generator. There may be some slight savings on that unit. But the big addition basically would be if we install the generator here, we would have to service the senior center. The power supply for the senior center comes in the front of the building. So I did a quick measurement the other day, and that's about a 500 to 600 foot run. So based on the conversations I had with our electricians, there would be a significant voltage drop between the unit and the service, which would require upgraded wiring, as well as all the expenses associated with trenching that distance. So basically, you may experience a bit of savings, but in actuality, you wouldn't. Other considerations that occurred is the phasings of the unit. this building here, the town hall, is a 3-phase unit. I haven't confirmed this yet, but I believe the senior center might be a single phase. That doesn't mean it can't be done if that's the case. It could still be done. You could still service a single phase building from a 3-phase unit. But basically, the generators for a 3-phase are a bit more expensive. So if you were to service a single phase building with a 3-phase unit, basically you're spending a little bit more on a generator that might not have to spend if it was a single phase unit. Another consideration would be the automatic transfer switch setup. The generator, the way an automatic transfer switch works, the power goes out, it sends a signal to the generator receives that signal, and then it decides to turn on, or it's triggered to turn on. The generator would have to be capable of reading 2 transfer switches independently. So when one transfer switch signaled the generator to go on, if the senior center still had power, you wouldn't necessarily use the power from the generator. So each building would have to operate independently. So you would have to get a generator and transfer switches that would be able to communicate independently with the generator. And the last thing is that although you might save a couple of dollars, you lose the redundancy. So if one generator was to go down, you would still have power in either the senior center or town hall, depending on which generator went down. If this generator was to go down for any reason, you would lose the power at both facilities. So that basically concludes what I have.
So any questions?
Yeah, so Sheldon, appreciate, sorry. Not Sheldon. I was just.
Ralph, you got it.
I was looking at Sheldon in his email.
Yeah, no problem.
Appreciate you getting this packages together pretty quick. My concern is we seem to be reactionary versus proactive on this stuff. The police generator is 37 years old. I just find it hard to believe they haven't requested, in my memory, a new generator or something sooner than this. I'm on board with doing something because that's unacceptable. So I just have a couple of questions. Are we looking at powering the entire building? Like, I understand a police department, you probably want the entire building. Town hall, I would think you'd want some emergency lighting, phone systems, computer backups, that kind of thing. That looks like a big generator. That looks to me like the 175 is enough to do the entire building, I would guess. Did you look at that?
That's correct.
Yeah, that generator would be capable.
15 degrees out. You got to have heat.
You gotta run your heating system, yeah.
Right.
But that's actually minimal compared to like an AC system. All your lights, things like that. I'm not sure that I'm there. And did anybody look at solar yet? And the return on investment, actually a pretty good layout for a solar place
Actually,
here.
it's a perfect layout for solar. It is. I don't know this for a fact, but I would not believe that we could put solar arrays on our roof that would come anywhere near meeting our total requirement.
I don't think you'd have to put them on the roof. I think you could put them in between some buildings on some vacant areas that we have around
You
here.
could. You
Well,
could.
in addition,
To look at.
Yeah.
can I just say something about solar for a second?
Yep.
Unless the rules have changed, solar generators don't give you backup power. They're basically shut down when the grid goes down. So unless you had some type of battery capacity.
Talking about one with a battery system, yes.
Yeah, I looked into this probably about 4 or 5 years ago, and the technology didn't exist. It may have changed since then.
I believe it has.
Yeah.
I can look into it and let you know.
Yeah.
If you'd like. I know you.
Yeah, but the
that'd be
problem
great.
there is if we lost town hall for 4 or 5 days, I don't think you'd have to have a massive bank of batteries to run this building for 5 days.
Well, it would recharge during
Yeah, recharge.
to some degree during.
Yeah,
To
to some degree it would,
Well,
depending on how many batteries you have and what the capacity was and what the usage was for that matter. It would recharge to a certain extent. It would require a bigger study to see what you could power. But I think the idea behind the town hall generator was to get our employees back to work as soon as possible and keep the town running as efficiently as possible. So yeah, that generator was sized to power up the entire building so everybody could basically come to work. And then as far as the police department generator, it was something that we talked about internally. We've actually been talking about that for at least 3 or 4 years. And I think there was a recommendation for a new police department or a major police department expansion And since we didn't know what that expansion would be, we kind of took the generator, replacing that generator off the table. And like I said previously, I sized the generator, double the capacity, not knowing exactly how big a generator you may need if we did add on to the police station. So I don't know what the future of that expansion project is, but that was why it probably never got to the Board of Finance level.
Yeah.
Understood. I just like the idea of green power if we can do it.
Yeah, I understand, and I think that would be a simple idea. Like I said, when we did have a couple of solar companies here, it was probably at least 3 years ago, and I did bring up the idea, and basically they said they haven't seen anything like that. But like I said, I haven't looked over that over the past several years, and I know the technology is changing quickly, as well as the solar panels are becoming more efficient. So I think it might
So
be
the way Ralph did this was to look at our police station. We expand it where it is or build a new police station. The generator would go with the new building.
correct.
That's why he doubled the size of it. So we're ready for whatever comes. We don't have to say, okay, we got a generator, but it's not big enough.
Agreed. Understood. On the police station. And I get if you want to get everybody back to work here.
Yeah.
I understand that too.
Yeah, I mean, I guess part of my question is kind of in line with Mark's with the town hall. I mean, the macroburst and some of these other storms have been hopefully more of an anomaly than, I mean, so having, now that we have a lot of employees also set up with laptops and the ability to work from home, it seems like having every office available to work might not be completely necessary. And then I was wondering about, is an automatic transfer switch for the senior center necessary? I mean, that's not occupied all the time. I mean,
Yeah, but it could be.
Town hall, you have, like you said, your voicemail and your data servers and that kind of stuff. But I would wonder
Yeah.
if it's
You
necessary.
could save some money not getting an automatic transfer switch, but if the senior center went down, it's winter or summer, gets really hot, gets really cold. It does take a while to get the building up.
Or the middle of the night, for that matter.
I'm actually not sure that you can do a commercial one without an automatic transfer switch legally, because it could backfeed the system and kill alignment down the road. So
Okay.
Yeah.
True,
it's
and there might
probably
be
something
situations where the power went down in the middle of the night and it could be 0 degrees out, and nobody might necessarily know that power went out at the senior center. So
Yes, it's much safer.
Yeah.
You get some guy switching, right, and backfeed and kill somebody.
Yep.
Thanks, Dan.
I'm definitely on board with the need that the police station definitely needs a new generator. I don't know that I'm totally sold on the town hall and the senior center yet. And I'm wondering, what is the risk of holding off on the town hall and the senior center and putting that through the normal budget process of putting it on the capital plan and putting that up for discussion during the budget season? I mean,
We
it's a
could
few
do that.
months out. What's that?
I know, go ahead, Ricky. I'm sorry. I thought you
Yeah, we could do that, Ricky. We're running some risk of if we're taken out in the next 9 months.
Yeah.
it was a request, and you took it out of the capital budget this past time around, Steve. So you were willing to take the risk 3 months ago.
Yeah, it's a risk you take, just like the Eversource did, and not calling the crews in.
Nice.
Right? It's a risk you take. My personal opinion is the police station is a much more immediate need. We have to have them up and running. And the way we've designed this, Ralph has designed this, this generator will work whatever we do with the police station over the next 10 years. I still think that it's very important for town hall and the senior center, because we had people knocking on our door Friday, asking to take showers, asking to come in and get some water. And we were able, with the fire department, the police department, creating a hotspot here, doing a lot of different things. But my opinion is, this is not going to get better, and it might get worse. It's a very good point you make of putting it through the normal capital projects, and I'm willing to do that, but I would like it to have a higher priority than some other projects.
That's your call.
Yeah, I understand. And what other am I wrong in assuming that the fire station is also, in case of an emergency, they're available?
No, they like to keep their building for an emergency shelter for their own people,
Gotcha.
families and things like that. We just got them a generator last year. It
Right.
went great. And they were able to give people water and stuff like that. And same thing with Candlewood.
So
They were
right
up-
now it's really just the high school that has.
Yeah, it's just the high school. And the high school is partially air conditioned.
Okay.
I know that we had the YMCA that offered showers for people. So we have other,
Yeah, but the problem with the Y is we fought all weekend with Eversource just to get them power.
Mm.
They had it 500 feet away on Federal Road, and they usually, when they do Federal Road, the YMCA is a priority location. But for some reason, Eversource didn't get to them. So we only got power there Sunday morning, and we're able to offer people showers Sunday afternoon, but it was too late to get the information out. 3 people took a shower. And on Monday, I think 10 people took a shower there. And that was really nice of them to do that because they did all the cleaning between showers. They staffed it. We're going to have to pay for the people who staffed it. And I'm fine with that. But that also, if they go out, you need redundancy these days.
So here's probably another dumb question, but why couldn't we just take if we buy the new generator for the police station, why couldn't we just take that old generator and put it on the senior center?
It is so old. It's 37 years old. We could do that.
Well, it's also not an
But
exterior
why-
generator.
but the-
It's built for an interior unit. It's not an exterior pad mounted generator.
Okay.
And it's 40 years old. I mean, the reason we want to get rid of it is because it broke down during the last storm. So it's not even a reliable unit. Basically, it's a 40-year-old diesel engine.
So let's not even consider it a backup then.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Well, it does run right now, right? It got fixed, it runs now. So
Yes.
it may or may not get us through the winter.
Yeah. But I think it's kind of like the high school during the macro burst, that generator, because it also was 40 years old, went down 3 times.
Mhm.
You need that reliability, and a 40-year-old unit might last you, if the new one broke down, all right, you can get 8, 10, 12 hours out of the backup while you fix it. That's why we got a new one in high school, because you needed that reliability. The generator worked, we fixed it 3 times. We spent a lot of money fixing it during the macro burst.
I don't like these reactionary things.
I understand that.
My mind right now is trying to work on some other scenarios, something green, or a trailer mounted one that we could take between buildings. If the police one went down, it could go, we could had to go there first if the police one goes down, but could be at the town hall normally. Just trying to wrap my head around some stuff.
We actually did in last year's budget. I don't know if it made it to the Board of Finance, but I did an estimate for a trailer mount unit. Believe it or not, a trailer mount unit is much more expensive. It's almost the same cost as the town hall and senior center unit because it's a trailer mount unit and it's mobile. It has to meet much more strict guidelines from the EPA. So trailer mount unit compared to the one pad mount for the town hall is $75. You might pay up to $120,000 for a trailer mount unit just for the generator itself. Obviously, you don't need the site design and pad, so you save a little bit on some of those items. But yeah.
And when
we
you
do
get
have an
to it,
estimate for that.
it's not like we need a building for 4 days and then can close it for 3.
I do
Trailer
understand.
mount doesn't really work. You need power, you need power.
You still need the transfer switches as well. If we were going to have a trailer mount unit, for example, that was going to serve the town hall and the senior center, depending, you would still need to do the interior electrical work in order to hook the generator up. So you still need your plug and your transfer switches, so you won't escape those
I
expenses.
do understand that. But there are also companies, I have 2 that I deal with, that we have agreements that we're the first one to get a generator if we call and need one. And within an hour, we have a generator. So I don't know that works at the police department, certainly. But
There are those services. You are correct about that. In order to prepare for those services, I would still need to do the work regarding the transfer switches. And
Understood.
So if you remember during the macro burst, we couldn't get generators, and finally Eversource gave us one. We finally got one for the high school. Took us 4 days. And then Eversource finagled it. I don't know how they did it and gave us a trailer mounted for town hall.
Yeah, that was actually a hookup that they did on their own. But if we were to make that same hookup, it would be considered illegal.
Well, they would consider it illegal.
Well, right, but no, what I'm saying, Steve, is there's companies you can pay a small fee to, but be on their list that they'll hold a generator in an emergency to bring it to you. So
There are contract. You could have a contract. I've explored that. I've explored that possibility. I don't have the numbers here tonight, but you can contract with firms who do that. Yes.
I'm just trying to get us out of a pinch
Yeah.
this winter. I'm just trying to think of this, I don't, first of all, I don't like, none of us, I don't think, like doing anything without a town vote, including Steve.
Yeah.
And knowing that right now is a tough time, but
Can you give me that name of that company?
well, Greco is the first one.
Greco?
Yeah. The thing that I was wondering about that is if you have a statewide emergency or a regional emergency like this, I was just wondering how they could accommodate everybody. Like with an isolated emergency like the macro burst, I could see them getting one here right away. But like emergencies like this, when all the streets are closed and there's limited access to get through, and there's many people who need generators, I was just wondering what the reliability of those companies would be.
Right. So my experience with that is, if they need to, they pull one off of a job site down in New Jersey, for instance, happened, and they brought it up to us in Rutland because we are on their list. And you're paying a premium. It's not a huge dollar amount. You're paying a premium to be that guy. And we need it, and we paid for it, and bring it to you.
It's an option, definitely an option.
Yeah.
It's a good option to think about now.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm definitely in agreement about the police station being a higher priority. I mean, we have an energy advisory board. That would be a good resource to use to look into the feasibility of solar and battery backup. I mean, we have solar panels, but we're leased and hooked up to the electric wires. So I thought about that, but we don't have the battery packs, but I know that they do make them now. And I'm sure our town hall is really, there's not a lick of shade on it. So I know that that's a good opportunity, and put it in the capital plan. I mean, I think for the senior center and town hall, that's something that we need to look at as a priority in the normal process.
One of the things that held us back on solar in the past is, even though you have a southern exposure on the town hall, there are, I think, 4 dormers on the front, which limited the space for panels. And based on the technology years ago, and I know the solar panels are a bit better now, it limited the opportunity for the number of panels you could put on the southern roof. But
Actually,
it may be
Ralph,
better now.
one of the cool things that now they have, we're doing on one of our properties, the whole parking lot, you make a solar array, everybody parks under it, your cars are in, and that powers all your buildings. And they have batteries in them, and they're pretty cool systems. I'm not saying they're cheap, but there is a return on investment on them. So there's lots of options nowadays in some of the newer technologies out there.
Right.
You can see that on if you're on Federal Road looking behind Stu Leonard's, that building behind there has got that in the parking lot.
Yeah, I think you guys absolutely need to consider the solar option. Just like Mark said, it just wouldn't be responsible if you're looking at a generator at the PD that's been in service for 37 years.
Yeah.
And then you factor in, that's a long time frame to make an investment. And then you have fuel costs and upkeep. You absolutely need to have somebody come in and explain the solar options, the batteries, the storage, before you won't be able to make a rational decision without that option being explored. So I absolutely agree with Mark on that.
I agree with Mark too. I have to, say I'm a little disappointed that it wasn't discussed at the Board of Selectmen and it came to us to make that recommendation. Anyway. Everybody's on mute.
Everybody's being polite.
Yeah. So I guess it's a question, where do we go? I mean, we received the motion from the Board of Selectmen for all 3. I don't get the feeling that we're all in agreement that all 3 is the way to go. Do we want to?
You can approve any portion of that you want.
So we can make a motion
Well, let's keep discussion going. I mean, I'm all for funding the cost for the police now. I understand that kind of cuts the need of looking into solar for it and having more thought and plan into it, but that doesn't sound like the police station is not something I would want down for any number of time during a storm, and would think that again, it being higher priority, we kind of just need to take a reactive action now. And that's just my thought. But town hall, senior center, I say, let it go through the normal process.
I agree.
I'm good with that. And if we do that, I'm sorry, go ahead, Ellen. Eileen, I'm sorry.
If the police one was repaired, I mean, was it repaired and we were told it's a temporary patch, and I mean, we know that it's old. I mean, my furnace is looking for.
Yeah, it was fixed. It's working fine right now, but they've had some difficulty with it in the past, and it's just at the end of its life. It could last another 5 years. We just don't know. I don't think that would happen, but.
Yeah, generator is no different than like a car engine per se, like a diesel truck engine. I mean, when they get to be old, things just start to break down, just like your vehicle would.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, then it becomes that question of, can it go through the normal capital projects process and not an emergency now.
Mark, where are you on the police generator? I'm curious.
I'm struggling to approve anything right now. If we were buying some spare parts, if we knew what parts were going down, you need a starter. I mean, you can't have everything, I guess, but it runs again now, and you put a new one in. A new one could have a hiccup and be under anything you put in. Could have warranty issues and things. And you're never going to know until the storm on the new one either. I don't know. How's that?
And what about you?
I was leaning towards Ricky, and if it was put to a vote, I would probably be on Ricky's suggestion, just because I do think it's a priority that I wouldn't flip the coin that if there was a storm or a disaster there that we would rely on the 37-year-old machine running. So I would take that insurance policy, but not the other two. But I don't deny your points either.
Okay. Should we make a motion?
Before we do that, I do have a problem with where it's suggested being funded from. I don't see how this is a COVID contingency item.
Where would you like it to come from?
General contingency or somewhere else, but I don't want to take it from COVID contingency when we don't know what those expenses are. And we specifically said it's going to be used, those are going to be used for COVID related items. And if not COVID related items, then it's going back to general funds. And we have a general contingency. We have other places for it, but I don't want to use COVID contingency for anything other than specifically COVID items.
I'm okay with that.
I would agree.
Same.
Do we have any other known? I mean, are there other? I mean, we talked about the savings on the town side that haven't. Can we pull from that now, or does that have to go through the budget transfers?
You could make a motion to move it from anywhere, but all the town budgets, we're only 2 months into the year. We don't know where we're going to have underruns or overruns for that matter. So I think the safest thing to do would be either go to capital non-recurring, where we're transferring some money from last year into it. This is a capital project. There would be funding there, or contingency.
How much do we have in capital non-recurring that we can use?
Marcia, how much would we have in there if we move the funds?
Based on the transfers we have now, we have just about enough or a little bit more than what we need. I think it's 872 and we have 770. So we should have enough in there without any more transfers, but we had just talked that we're expecting to do more transfers. So if you wanted to take it out of capital non-recurring, we would be good.
The 85,200.
85,200, yes. The, right now we have 872,000 that we moved to go over there in the budget. When we pulled everything, the last time we did big transfers, we pulled everything to move to capital non-recurring. At that time it was 872,000. We know we're going to use 777 for the combination of 600,000 going into the budget and the 2019 non-lapsing fund. So we have roughly 100,000 that will be in there if we don't do anything else.
Okay, yeah, I like the idea of paying for it with capital non-recurring because that makes the most sense to me.
Agreed.
All right. Can I
Any-
make a motion to? I don't have the wording in front of me, so maybe Eileen, if you want to
Yeah,
come up with an eloquent motion.
I took some notes.
Read it with the amount.
There you
So
go.
I'll make a motion to approve the appropriation in the amount of $85,200 for the police department exterior mounted generator from the capital non-recurring fund.
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, so my discussions is I just don't think we've looked at all the options yet. It runs now, it's been repaired. That's my 2 cents. I'm going to be a no vote right now.
I respect that, Mark. That's a fair, very fair take.
Yeah, I guess one of the other questions in my mind is what is the turnaround time for, getting an RFP? We know we're heading into hurricane season and our storms are getting worse, but what is the turnaround time on getting a new generator?
So Ralph, how quickly could you get a generator installed? Go out to bid and get it installed?
Well, if you look at my estimate, basically that's a design build. So we would have to prepare an RFP, which I have a draft of an RFP that I was working on. And then it would probably be at least a few weeks to get responses back on that. Then once we got responses, they would have to design the system and then do the construction. So, it's probably at least 2 or 3 months out till we could actually have a generator servicing the building.
And then we're hitting winter storms.
And that's if you can get delivery on one shorter than 14 weeks.
That's true.
Right now it's going to be tough.
I agree.
And they're going to be at a premium price this time of year.
You're right.
If the vote is 3-1,
It passes.
it does? Oh, okay. I wasn't sure I thought it needed to be 4.
Nope, it's voting members. So 2-2 would go to Steve.
Gotcha.
3-1
Okay.
to pass.
Yeah. If there's a quorum, then the board can conduct all business with the majority of people present.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Had Glenn shared any thoughts with anybody or Brianna about the generators prior to the meeting?
Not to me.
I saw Glenn's point about the source of the funds, which I shared, but I didn't see anything else.
Okay. Then let's take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes 3-1.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I did just get a text from my solar guy that he absolutely does emergency setups for many towns around the country.
Okay.
So
Yeah, thanks, Mark. If you could give me his information, I would love to speak with him. Thank you.
absolutely will.
Yeah, please do. So, and I'm guessing that the board
And I'm
wants,
not, I just want to say I'm not, we're not suggesting we use him.
no. Just another.
It's a good start. Thank you.
And I would suggest that the board also make a motion that you table the other two until when? So we have a record.
As part of the annual capital project.
Yeah, do we need to put in a motion to table it if you're just going to stick it on the budget during the normal budget process?
I'm just thinking if somebody looked back at the minutes, they'd say, okay, you approved the police. Did you approve the town hall and senior center or not?
Gotcha. Okay.
I'm just saying for clarity purposes in the future. It's a
I-
little,
If we could put those two to a vote and vote no, if we wanted to be clear.
Okay.
you could do that.
Okay, let me get the wording out again. Okay. I make a motion to approve an appropriation in the amount of $57,600 for the senior center exterior mounted generator and $145,800 for the town hall generator from the capital non-recurring fund.
Second.
Any discussion?
I was writing my notes. Any discussion? Oh. All in favor?
Yes.
All opposed?
Nay.
Okay. Motion does not pass. 0-4. Okay, moving on to our last two new business items. We have the iterative budget review process.
So I think that that's the same as the COVID this month.
Okay, so then we'll lump those together with the COVID cost budget transfers. So we'll give you the floor again.
All right, Steve, do you want me to take this one or do you want it? I'll take it. What we've been doing is trying to figure out our costs. Obviously, we had a lot of the costs last fiscal year, but we want to use the same process for both sides. You had the written process the last month. So we're trying to give you the costs that we would have. We've got some wages there that for the police department, the town hall, the library, social services, and then the two parks for Parks and Rec. As far as wiping down the surfaces, keeping them clean, that based on what I've read from FEMA, that should be covered 75% from FEMA. That it's what the literature says. We'll see what happens in real life. That's why it's coded green, that green here, green meaning I think will be covered by FEMA. We've got a door monitor that we've got in at least through September, we think, when we open. Then we'll reevaluate that. And what that person does is they ask the health questions, and originally they were taking temperatures when that was required. It's no longer required. They're enforcing the masks, and we're open by appointment only, so that she calls the different departments and lets them know that they have somebody here. And it just keeps the people out as much as possible.
And we're also going to use a contact tracing if we need to do. If somebody comes in and has COVID-19, we'll know who was in the building and can contact them.
And the concerts in the park that enforcing the social distancing. I haven't seen anything specifically that says that this will be covered by FEMA or any other grant. That right now FEMA is our only one out there. So that one is not highlighted in green. We have some PPE that we have gloves and masks. We already had hand sanitizer that we bought last year. We don't have wipes. Some of the places are getting wipes because Sheldon is using disinfectant and paper towels. And he has enough. He thinks he's got a very good supply of that. That PPE type stuff would be, again, as far as I can tell, would be covered by FEMA. That some other things that we're working on, that dividers, we had put dividers in last year's budget, a different type of partitions, and that's why we're so far under budget, because we couldn't get, they were much more expensive. We couldn't get the partitions. These are Lexan dividers instead of our very classy shower curtains that and not only are they classier, but they are not a fire hazard. That's been agreeable to the fire marshal. Desk shields for the elections, and that should be covered by the state elections state Secretary of State's office, is what we've been told. That we had to do excess absentee ballots. We had to have 80 printed for each voter. We had some issues with the mailing, and so some had to be mailed out. So that's what the excess ballots and stamps are for. That is the first tranche through October 31st. And we're going to have to look at that for the general election as well. It looks like that. I guess it depends on who wins here on how that vote's going to go. I put unemployment in just because that's a big number that we have not laid off anybody, but a lot of our employees work part-time employees work other jobs. And so that's been an issue. 50% of that is being paid by the state. And at the last unemployment form that came in, it did look like we would, paid by the federal, it did look like we would still stay within our $10,000 budget. But again, it's something that we need to continue to monitor. That we do have some savings. The Connecticut Conference of Municipalities gives us a rebate some years. We did have one. We haven't had much fanfare about it this year. Some years it's $50,000. For June 30th of 2020, that we received in July, it was $20,000. And what they decided to do was, if we pay our fee, they'll give half of it back up front just to help us out. So that's a savings. Right now, we're not having to do public notices in the newspaper for a lot of them are zoning type things. We have $24,000 in the budget for that. So the first section, which is not exactly a quarter of the year, through October 31st, they just estimated if they're evenly throughout the year, which they seem to be, about $8,000. And then each other, it goes by the number of weeks. Again, they're not quite equal. FICA and Medicare that are payroll this summer for the self-sustaining fund for Parks and Rec was much lower. The general fund pays the Social Security and Medicare for them. So we're estimating that to be a $6,700 savings. So we would need the net cost, because this would be reclassifying between these things, that we would need to take from the contingency $28,000 to cover the net expenses. Some of that would be covered by revenue, that $900 from the registrar, FEMA, and so it's $17,000 of revenue. So the net cost to the town then would be $10,000 for this first quarter. Two things that we don't have in here. EMS, we've asked them, although we're not seeing that they're going to have a lot of additional cost. Last year they put on that extra shift. They put on, they had a lot of the quarantining of the workers, which was a lot of extra money. Right now, we don't see that happening unless, again, it ramps up again. So we're not thinking that the extra money from EMS is going to be significant right now. And the library is still working on their reopening plan on what they're going to need for that. Steve has been working with them on like a door monitor or limiting the hours to limit the cost for a door monitor. Some of the other costs that if they're just a few hundred here or there, we've told the departments find it in your budget. If they're not going to be reimbursed by FEMA, we don't want to lose potential grant reimbursements because it's buried in the budget, but we don't want to just start adding, $20 here and $20 there on this.
Yeah. There's one other item coming up. During the primary, we usually get 8 to 10% of the people who vote by mail-in or drop off their ballot. At the primary, it was just over 60%. So for the election on November 3rd, we're thinking there will be similar numbers. That means we could get 4,000 to 6,000 ballots in paper that have to be managed by hand. It's very labor intensive. There are about 15 steps you have to go through. So we may have to hire additional people with a registrar just to process all those ballots that are being dropped off. We're trying to figure out what it'll cost, but we don't have a good number yet. Just want to give you a heads up on that.
And we just found that out at the end of last week, and this was
Right.
prepared 2 weeks ago. Any questions on any of this? Is it because it's 9 o'clock?
I don't have any questions.
So we'd like you to consider approving this transfer. That gives all the details of the funds. We're working to break that out, both the savings and the costs separately. That way we can, when we do year-over-year comparisons, we won't include these costs. And when we have savings, we won't include the savings. For example, the PERMA fees, we want to compare the gross fee of $10,000 to next year's $10,000. We don't want to include the one-time savings. And so that's why we've broken it out on both sides there. And we can pull reports directly from Munis for that. And Ken and I are meeting tomorrow, so we can try to fashion a report that would be the same that the town shows you and the Board of Ed shows you.
So Marcia, you're asking that the board make a motion to transfer $10,496.16, if I can read that properly. Is that correct?
We're asking for the motion from the contingency to be the 28, because this stuff will show up in revenues.
Right.
So just to keep everything gross to gross, it
Yep.
would be to take 28,179.37 from the contingency and put it into these different locations.
Somebody else is going to have to make that. I can't read that on this tiny little screen.
I'll make a motion that the Board of Finance approve an appropriation of $28,179.37 to come out of the COVID contingency fee for the to cover the cost of COVID-related expenses in the town.
Yep, and up to October 31st.
Up to October 31st. Sorry, Mark, you were shaking your head.
I'm sorry, Eileen. I couldn't hear about half of that.
Sorry, I'll try again. I'll make a motion to approve an appropriation of $28,179.37 from the COVID contingency fund for expenses up to October 31st, 2020. for COVID-related expenses.
I'll second that.
Okay. Discussion?
Good.
Is everything still running on budget then for,
Yeah.
I know we looked at revenues and expenses.
I'm sorry, could you speak up a little bit?
Yeah, I'm sorry, it's getting late.
We are not aware of any, I mean, interest income. We're not going to hit the revenue, the things that we talked about there. We've talked about the things, the ones that we showed in the economic recovery dashboard are the ones that we're concerned about. We have little things here and there that we, for example, in my department, we have some major illnesses. So we're going to be asking for a transfer, part-time wages versus overtime. But so we have little adjustments. We don't know of any large adjustments at this time.
Mm-hmm. And these are COVID-related expenses, which is what we said we were using that general fund for.
These are.
It helps kind of keep track of where.
Yeah.
we're covering them.
Otherwise, we're pretty much on target with our budgets, except for the few things we talked to you about already.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But it's only July.
Yeah. Anyone else? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
None opposed? Passes 4-0. Okay. Are there any other items to come before the board?
I don't think we can do that because this is a special meeting now anyways.
Right.
But this was a regular meeting.
Yeah, that was just the rescheduled regular meeting.
No, it still has to be
So it is-
listed in the agenda because it's not being held on your normal monthly date that you pre-announce in the beginning of the year.
Okay.
Mark's right on that.
In that case, our agenda, I think, says regular, unless I'm not looking at, I know that there was discussion about changing it to special. Do we need-
It says special, but it also has other items on it.
Okay. Okay.
We have nothing.
Right, exactly.
Then I guess the next question is to Dan Secor. Do we have anybody waiting for public comment?
Nope, just you guys in here, it looks like still.
Thank you. Does anyone want to make a motion to adjourn?
Sounds like you just did.
I did a lot of motions tonight. I'll leave somebody else to do it.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Great job, Eileen.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Very good. Have a good night, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.